the second place. Pop off for the home team, always, always. I wanna build a conclave for the black babies in the hallway. Tell them dream big, go the long way. Cause the word is yours like when I say. Cause they don't tell you it could be like this. But this squad only come with the hits. Times get tough and keep your wits. Can't let no evil touch these lips. We don't take no defeat like this. Who you know with the heat like this? Who you know with they feet like this? And we like this. Cause we blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Just hit and get smacked. We got the map. We gotta keep it on track. We blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Just hit and get smacked. We got the map. We gotta keep it on track. Running ahead and I'm yelling Geronimo. All of my power come right out my follicles. I got it online like my hair be. They scared of we. Beware of we. Who you know go and turn nothing to something. We steady thriving. They thought we was crumbling. All around the world our music bumping. That's humbling to see. We don't succumb to defeat. Even with crumbs at our feet. We making waves in the streets. We made a way in the streets. All of my people gon' eat. We on the way to the fees. While bumping this heat and patting these twists on beat. Move too slick, no grease. Push through, make it look easy. Cause we blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Just hit and get smacked. We got the map. We gotta keep it on track. We blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Just hit and get smacked. We got the map. We gotta keep it on track.
Blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Just hit and get smacked. We got the map. We got to keep it on track. We blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Touch it and get smacked. We got the map. We got to keep it on track. Yeah. We black and we proud. Go tell your sons and your daughters to stand tall and always remind them of who they are. The sky's the limit and none of that can change when God is in it. Often imitating, never duplicated melanin. Take a look at the world, man. We always in. Woo! I'm black and I'm proud. I used to say my hair was so nappy. Now I embrace the beauty that flows out of me. From the top of my head to the sole of my feet. And you know you can't check me. You like my hair straight? I said take that to Becky. That's a wrap for this verse. Cause we blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Touch it and get smacked. We got the map, yeah, we gotta keep it on track. We blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Touch it and get smacked. We got the map, yeah, we gotta keep it on track. We blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Touch it and get smacked. We got the map, yeah, we gotta keep it on track. We blackity black. Please step back. I like my hair like that. Touch it and get smacked. We got the map, yeah, we gotta keep it on track. Yeah.
Who got that range? Who brought them chains? Went through the maze. Came out the end into some brighter days. Getting win after win. They thought it was a phase, but now I ain't a phase. Leave them in the days. This ain't for play. This has been away. This is for the days when you thought she wasn't gonna make it. But look, ma, we made it. We won it. We take it. We stay on this ground, and this ground don't get shaky. We shape but the babies don't never get flaky. Don't mind if you hate me. Can't nobody take me. Maybe I shouldn't be so blatant, but blatantly, who care about what you say to me patiently? We've been moving up the ladder so faithfully. We've been pushing through disasters so frequently. Sweet like roses. We stand tall with this. Free like Moses. Act like you know this. Sweet like roses. We stand tall with this. Free like Moses. Act like you know this. Black, 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 black.
Black, 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 black,
Black, black, black, black, black, black.
black, 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 black,
Black, black, black, black, black, black.
black, 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 black,
Black, black, black, black, black, black.
yeah.
Black, black,
Black,
black, black.
black, black,
Black, black,
black,
black, black.
black, black.
All right. Welcome back to another episode of The World Can Wait. We're excited to be here with you guys. Excited to dig into tonight's conversation. I think really interesting one, one that I don't feel like gets talked about a lot, at least not as much as it should. You may have some differing views on this, which of course, like we say all the time, this is for express different views and understandable each other. So tonight we are talking about Black History Month as a whole, but some of the things we kind of want to get into. If you notice the graphic, you'll see that there's a box titled February, and big name Black history figures are popping out of the box, but it's very tight. The idea behind that is Black History Month, and really in America, Black history as a whole, stuffed in box for February. Stuff in February, everyone pops out, stuff them all back in when February is over. And besides that, we don't do too much. What we do here usually revolves around the same 5 or 6 Black heroes. And so we really want to talk about that tonight and kind of dive into why that exists, should that exist, this whole Black history thing appropriate? Like what do we do? Where do we go? Do we stay the same? But that's really what we want to get into. So without further ado, we'll pass it over to Charles. We're gonna pray real quick and we'll get into this.
All right. Other meaningful as we our perspective learn other world that we
Amen, amen. Okay, so everyone here is Black. I think we can all agree on that. Yep,
black.
Black. But that doesn't mean that we're all the same. Doesn't mean that we all think the same. We all have the same feelings about every situation. We do have different views about different things. And so, since we're talking about Black History Month as a whole, I want to hear from each of you guys. What exactly does Black History Month mean? Courtney, why don't you kick us off?
So for me, it's supposed to be, or for me, it should be a celebration of Black accomplishments. And it's not just about like, or it shouldn't necessarily just be about like slavery or the negative impacts on Black Americans, but how we achieved above and beyond the oppression and the disparities and all of these things that have been built to basically trip us up. So it's about like celebrating like how far we've come, is celebrating our inventions, our contributions, and all the things that we've done to make this America great.
Okay. Terrell, how you feel about Black?
That's a really good question. And it's a question that I have throughout my life come back to and rethought in a lot of different ways, just because I think that, you know, for those of us who grew up during the 90s, multiculturalism was the thing, right? It was the way it was taught. And I mean, I even often talk with some of my old teachers and my mom was a teacher, about the way you'd go to school and the little bulletin boards that have these decorations, and it would be people from all over the world, all represented there, like we're one big happy family. And then you get to something like, oh, it's February, it's Black History Month. And it can be real easy, depending on, you know, what you see or what you feel. And a lot of different people feel that way. Why are we doing this? And the celebration, the uplift, that's really important. But especially as I've sort of become a graduate student of African-American literature and thought more about these things, I could see that the reason why is because if we backpedal, you know, 20, 30 years, and then even further, there wasn't any representation. You could go your entire K through 12 and through college taking history courses and not have a lesson about African Americans other than the fact that, oh, slavery was a thing and then it ended, and then the right to vote, and then so on and so forth, et cetera, right? You know, just those little bit moments, but no real focus on what's going on. And so Black History Month serves to undo a lot of that forgetting, a lot of that erasure that's happened for so long. And the thing that I've come to sort of wrestle with it is that as much as there is uplift, and that's necessary and really important, there also needs to be a story about how Black life, especially in the United States and really across the world, is about struggle. How it is about wrestling with oppression and developing ways to combat oppression, but also developing ways of living in the midst of oppression that might not look like whatever else you see in terms of those who aren't within that lifestyle. So that's kind of the way I kind of end up squaring what Black History Month should be and needs to be in 2020.
it's kind of like this hype moment. Like you use the word celebration, almost a big celebration. It's like the month where I can be blackety black and can't say nothing to me. So then there is that historical aspect as far as taking time to learn about things that we otherwise may not know about. I mean, like you said, representation didn't exist, and now even growing up in the '90s, representation was still scarce. History, even then, it still was. This was slavery, bad. Not everybody there liked it though. Then it ended. Then Martin Luther King fixed racism and good now. And that's just kind of how you're taught through school. So Black History Month is kind of like this. Okay, great. Now we get to dig into everything. But then it conflicts with me because it's like it shouldn't be okay. Now we get to look at this. I feel like we've been in this country as long as anyone else by force. Our history is this country. We should be able to do this every day out the year. We should have to do this every day out the year. And I agree with you, Terrell, as far as this month was needed because we went from zero representation. Okay, we need to have this month so that we can find some way to get this information out to ourselves, everyone else. But I also feel like, and I don't want to get too ahead of myself because we're going to get into this. I feel like we kind of have to evolve with that. I look at Black History step.
Yeah, like I agree with everything that is this. And it's a necessary celebrate Black accomplishments, all those things. Ultimately, what Black history is work is far from done. The fact that we're still relegated to just this month, like and graphic. But it made me think about Thanksgiving or Christmas or really any holiday. Like the couple of weeks leading up to Thanksgiving, you're so excited because you're getting ready to crush that fried turkey, you're ready to crush that mac and cheese, and then once the meal's over, yeah, you got some leftovers, but depending on how big your family is, how much you cook, it's over. And that's what it is with Black History Month. Love Martin Luther King Jr. Let's talk about Harriet Tubman. She freed the slaves, and honestly, in school, I don't really remember other than Martin Luther King Jr. Those were the only two Black people who did anything. And I was just okay. So yeah, it just means that work is fun. But I don't want to roll into the next question. One of the things I've seen a lot of, especially in recent, is a lot of white people comments like Black History Month is racist, or Black History Month is segregation. Like, how would you feel if we had a white history? And so interesting, as that question is being asked, like, what do you think we do? First of all 12 months. I mean, well, yeah, 12 months during Black History Month. You know what I mean? So it's like, what do you need White History Month for? But to go deeper, what I wanted to ask is, and I guess maybe if you had just off of your speculation, and it's not just white people feel that way, because there are Black people who don't care for it, some who I'm not Black. Why don't people like Black History? And I mostly want to focus on why you think white people, but why don't people in general like?
So if I may, I just wanted to give a little context behind the establishment of Black History Month.
So go for it.
And maybe that can kind of even help some of our listeners are, even white people that are questioning why there is an existence of Black History Month to begin with. Black History Month is only 44 years old. And it was originally established by our Carter D. Woodson, who also wrote The Miseducation of the Negro, he actually wanted it to just be a week. And the purpose for, well, when he established it for just a week was because we're talking about like 1915. He was, you know, he was a son of slaves. During this time, we had minstrel shows, we had Step and Fetch It, we had all these things, blackface, that existed, where they over exaggerated these stereotypes about Black people. So what he did as a historian, Harvard grad, was he wanted to establish a week to get away from the perpetuated stereotypes that was existing at the time about Black people, which we can see. That's part of the reason why Black History Month is important now, because some of those stereotypes still exist, like right now today, that we are lazy, that we are criminals, that we are, you know, we don't take care of our families, we can't get along, all these other things. And so a lot of things that come out when we start celebrating us and we start celebrating our accomplishments, our achievements, is it helps those people, because just like you said, Terrell, how you could go through the whole history from K through 12 and not see any Black faces or have any Black history. There are people that are going to school from K through 12 and not having any close relationships or you know, anything with Black people in general. So all they have are these stereotypes. So you have this week that was turned into a month, but wasn't turned into a month until 1976. I was born in 1981. So by the time I was born, I was only 4 years old. And like, to your point, we did have bulletin boards and pictures. My early elementary school years, I actually went to a predominantly Black inner city school. And so it was Black history all the time. We learned Black history. We learned, you know, songs about, you know, Black people. We performed Lift Every Voice and Sing. That was our national anthem when we got to school. That's what I learned to sing as I, you know, after the pledge to the flag, we sung Lift Every Voice and Sing. And so it's like, if we don't have Black History Month, if we totally take that away, what do we have left? Because if we don't force upon people our right to live here and our existence and everything that we've done, they won't accept it. I just read an article not too long ago where white people wanted to opt out of their kids learning Black history. It's almost like history is an attack on their very existence in the first place. Instead of, and I even read an article, I read a poll where it said that 85% of Black people said that there's not enough Black history taught in school, where 1 in 5 white people think there's too much. But we all just talked about how, you know, Harriet Tubman, Martin Luther King, you may get a paragraph about Nat Turner, not too much, because we don't want you to get too, we don't want you to get too revolutionary. We're gonna just tell you a little bit. You know, you might get Benjamin Banneker, you know, you might get Oprah, so that it can show that we can make money. You might get Madam C.J. Walker, but it seems like all of those things are the, you know, it's, I can't remember who said that. I want to say that it was Malcolm X that said, be careful who people tell you your heroes are. Don't let your enemy tell you who your heroes are. So when you minimize us and put us in a box and say, these are the only ones that we want to celebrate, that the world gets to celebrate, you minimize our roles and our opportunities, and you also keep us complacent. You also keep us, you know, in a box within ourselves, because we can't see past entertainment. We can't see past sports. We don't see that we are scientists, physicists. We don't, like, what's this, Neil deGrasse? Like, we should have all been learning about him. How many Black children and Black men has been shown they score off the charts when it comes to science and math and all the other stuff. So instead of hyper focusing on entertainment and athletes, we should be hyper focusing on the Neil deGrasse's of the world. But we don't get that stuff in school. So this is the reason why this is important, because it is a time for us to highlight that. But the reality of it is, Black history isn't even taught in school anymore. There really is no Black History Month. I just asked my son the other day, so what have y'all done for Black history in school? Nothing. It's not a thing. It's not a thing anymore, like it was when we were in school. At least we had a month. Now we just have kind of like what's that drink that they have out now where it's like sudsy, but it tastes like the remnants of fruit? What is it called? LaCroix.
LaCroix.
It's a LaCroix version of Black History Month. It's a thing. Even in church, they give us a weekend. They give us a weekend, and then all of a sudden it gets super black. We like choir come up there.
You're talking about black church or white church?
White church.
Predominantly white church. The church. In the diverse church, you get that one weekend. And it's like, yeah, we're celebrating Black history. Like Black people ain't been here being your ushers, being your welcome people, being your child care people. Like we haven't been putting in work. We've been to help. So why is it that we only get one weekend at the month? Just, we highlight MLK. Why do we just highlight these certain people? And then Black people are supposed to be accepting of that. And we're supposed to be like, thank you. Thank you so much for acknowledging my presence for a weekend or for 28 days. Thank you. Out of 46 presidents, we got one. We need a White History Month.
One of the most, you mentioned the 46 presidents, we got one. So fun was, I remember we did a conversation, mixed it, about one of the guys up there talking about not being Black enough for the Black. And when I think about Obama, I remember when a lot of Black people were really happy and proud. I remember hearing a lot of, well, he's only half Black. And now it's like, well, you already had your Black president. So they get to pick and choose when he's Black enough, or when any of us are Black enough or Black for any particular. Yes.
And to your point, that's how they did our Madam VP, right? She couldn't be a Black woman. She just could not be a Black woman. She had to be South Asian. She had to be all these things first. But we didn't make the rule. Y'all put the one drop rule in the Constitution that said whatever your daddy is, that's what you are. We didn't make that up. So based off of the Constitution, since we want to stay constitutional, they Black. And Kamala's Black because they daddy Black.
Terrell, what's kind of been your experience as far as like seeing hate towards Black history?
So honestly, I think, well, at this point, I think I see it in three different directions. And the one direction that we've kind of talked about already, to me, it comes across in the same way that people talk about race with respect to entitlement, right? So there's Black History Month. Why do Black people get a month? What about everybody else? So on and so forth, right? And we've already started to talk a little bit about the sort of problematic language of that. Like, why is there, this is a horrible example, but why is there Black entertainment television? Well, because every other channel is white entertainment television, quite frankly. Not that Black entertainment, BET, should be taken as a hallmark of Black culture or a representation of it in any wide sense. Just put that out there. But that's the sort of similar logic. I also think that from within, however, there's some resistance to Black History Month. I think that there are some people who think that, it's a bit patronizing, right? That we have to have this 1 week to focus exclusively on African Americans, African American history, so on and so forth. And the context of the sort of erasure or the lack of representation, so on and so forth. I think it gets a little bit lost in that. At the same time, however, and I have a feeling we're going to get into this deeper, so I won't dwell too much on it. I have a few friends on my timeline that are pretty critical of Black History Month right now, and not so much critical of Black History Month because of what it is or what it stands for with the need for representation, but what it gives license to certain institutions to do. And in particular, and I need to be, I needed to do my due diligence and cite some of my sources here. A friend of mine who I met while I was an undergrad and debating, and He lives in Baltimore. He's a part of an organization called Leaders of the Beautiful Struggle, doing a lot of grassroots work. Named Adam Jackson. So for those of you curious, look him up and look up his organization. He's been very vocal, in particular, about Apple and T-Mobile. And some of the things that they've done with their icons and their logos, with the red, the black, and the green as a kind of a commodification of a lot of Black culture and icons of Black resistance to make a profit. And it's not that different than conversations that people were having over the summer during the protests, when all of a sudden now it's trendy to put hashtag Black Lives Matter on your product, or to say that Target is in support of Black lives. When, where was that however long ago? What other things, what is your relationship to police departments, so on and so forth, right? But now, because it's Black History Month, no matter what's going on within your internal machinations or how you treat the Black people who either, work for your organization in a front-facing appearance or are doing the help work, who are cleaning your toilets, among other things. But you get to do this sort of dog and pony, quite frankly.
Yeah, I have Black friends.
Basically.
I'm so glad.
1 month, 28 days.
I'm so glad you brought up Target, because I've said this millions of times before. And I am a Target shopper. I love Target, but every 28 days, especially this Target by me, they have one shelf. They have this one shelf, this one little station at the corner with all the Black stuff on it. Barack Obama book 20% off. All the books, all the Black books are 20% off, and they have it, like front stage in the corner. And then they do partner with, and I've gone to the website, they partner with a lot of Black creators, like the young lady who owns Mess in a Bottle, which is a t-shirt company, just putting that out there, just popping that a little bit, because, Black women, right? So anyway, they do still capitalize of those things. That's why for me, unless I know that the creators are Black, when I purchase something from a non-Black store, I won't buy it, because I do know that this is the time, just like any other type of holiday, where they capitalize off of the emotions and the feelings of a certain market. So I know one thing that I could appreciate Target for is they do carry like Black Girl Magic wine. They carry McBride Sisters wine. So they do a little bit better than some companies when it comes to like having Black stuff out there and to, in the forefront. Honey Pot is been out there forever. So they do partner with smaller Black businesses, which I can appreciate, but they don't celebrate it on the forefront where they're making noise about it until it does come to Black History Month. And that I agree that is opportunist. That's very frustrating. And I don't even know what the answer is to that, more so than to say that during Black History Month, if you want to support Black people, support Black businesses that are Black businesses, and do your due diligence to make sure that if you are going to purchase something or an item that's from a non-Black business, that the creators are Black and that the creators are actually receiving some type of proceed or royalties from the purchases that you make. And that's how we start back with circulating the Black dollar back in the Black community. But that's a whole nother topic and a whole nother day.
Ours.
Yeah, and I think that's the I feel like the month trade upon corporations. I turned on Apex right early February. Got this Black icon, Black fist icon, and I was like, I almost turned the game right. I was like, come on, what?
That pissed me off.
Because out of nowhere, and like you said, like you never see this stuff. The first time I ever saw that ever on that game, and the same with Target. It's like, where does this stuff go on March 1st? Y'all just put it back in the box and it goes back to the store. We don't see it nowhere else in the store. So yeah, I think that is one of the biggest gripes. It was like, okay, got this month. Finally got this thing years ago. Now it's being appropriated for other means. Now they're coming in to make a quick buck. 28 days. So yeah, that's a big one for me too. Kind of focusing on other races, and I guess specifically white people. You feel like it is important, or even acceptable for white people to celebrate Black history? Where do you stand on that? Is it something that everyone should kind of take part in, or is it that, or why don't you kick it off?
I think that it should
Okay,
be
Terrell.
almost mandatory. I'm sorry, did you say
No,
Terrell?
I did,
didn't hear
but you
say that.
started. Keep going. Keep going.
I'm
You're
sorry.
good.
I'm sorry, Terrell.
You're good. You're
I
good.
got bad habits. Forgive
You
me.
good? You
Forgive
good?
me ahead of time.
You on a roll, so you keep rolling.
You're
This is
fine.
why I get kicked off the show for I get put on hiatus. But
He's never been kicked off the show. Everybody knows that.
Ever.
I'm sorry. I'm really excited about this topic. I literally begged to be on the show because I had a rough week dealing with white people and their strong disdain. I won't say all white people, but they know who they are and they're probably watching, and I see you. But they have such strong disdain for Black History Month, as if there aren't other months that have other cultures that have Heritage Months. So it makes it, make me question, and really I had to straight up ask people, if I tell you that there are other Heritage Months, but your biggest gripe is Black History Month, then maybe it's not the fact of the month that you don't hate or that you don't like. You just don't like Black people. And you're just not ready to
Say that again. I couldn't hear you.
What I had said was that if you recognize that there are other Heritage Months, Hispanic Heritage Month, Native American Month, Asian Month, Jewish Month, if you recognize, there's even an Irish American History Month, and predominantly when white people kind of want to discredit Black
Irish slaves.
Yeah, I was Irish. Y'all all were Irish slaves. Okay, anyway, I digress. There's Irish Heritage Month. So if all these other months, these Heritage Months exist, but you don't have a problem with those, but you have a problem with Black History Month, then one would kind of get to a point of thinking that it's not the Heritage Month that you have a problem with, it's Black people that you have a problem with. So there's that. But what I was going to say, to get back to your question, is that when Dr. Woodson had established Black History Month, he said it was his hope and his aim for Black people to have knowledge of self, but for white people to understand that there were contributions that were made by Black people so that they could start to recognize it. And his hope and his dream, because we don't talk about his dream, was, because we only know about MLK's, but his dream was for there to be a point where Black History Month was no longer necessary, because it had been used and put into school and for context and historical references where it wasn't be a necessity. So just like any other Black institution that has been established, from HBCUs to Black Greek to all these things, they were established because Black church, they were established because we were not allowed to have a presence in the mainstream reality of things. So now to get mad of the existence of Black History Month, you shouldn't be mad at Black people because we have the month. You should be mad at the establishment that we need a Black History Month.
Terrell.
Courtney, you put it right where it belongs. It's the logic of all lives matter. It's like no one said they didn't, but somehow Black Lives Matter is an affront to everything to you. What's that about? It's weird thinking about this question, because the first thing that pops to my mind is, what does it mean for a white person to celebrate, observe, or honor Black History Month? What is required of you? To walk through the Target and notice, the shelf. Do you have to buy something from the shelf? What does that, what are you called upon to do? And I think that, interestingly enough, it's somewhat easy when you're in school or when you're a child attending high school or middle school, because it's pay attention. right, and learn something, right, and pick that up. I think that the call is easier there. But once you're on your own, or there's not someone, you know, sitting in front of you giving you a lecture or a lesson on something every day, then you know, the charge is a bit different. And I kind of think back to Target. We were just talking about Target, and the other day I was in Target and I saw that there was the shelf, right? And deeper into Target, there was a shelf where there's particularly a book section, right? And what kind of caught me off guard was that there was a book there by Toni Morrison, and very few people who don't study and follow African American literature, I think, know about this book. But it was called The Source of Self-Regard, and it was a collection of all of her big essays and some of the big things that she had written. And that's one of the things that, you know, some people didn't know about her. It's like, yeah, she was an amazing novelist, but her nonfiction and some of her literary criticism is exemplary. And one of the things that she really kind of hit home, and one of the things I focus on in my own research, but I also focus on when I teach American literature of any type, is that if you're thinking about American literature, you have to be thinking about race, right? I don't care if it's James Baldwin or F. Scott Fitzgerald or Ernest Hemingway, whoever it is, race is at play in what they are doing, whether they explicitly say it or not. And she was very good at teaching, you know, this is all the ways in which it forms every single aspect of American society, including what people wrote about it. And to that end, I feel like for a white person or an institution to give somebody the option to say, no, I don't want to do Black History Month, or I don't want to observe Black history, it's like, okay, you've gone from just, it's not like you went to McDonald's and you decided you didn't want the quarter pounder. Now you're starting to deform the curriculum. You're a part of an engine of, I mean, you know, it might be a bit outlandish to say it this way. You're creating alternative facts when you present the curriculum and the information in that way. And you know, you're doing yourself a disservice, but you're also not really grasping what's ahead of you. You're not really understanding the reality that you're a part of. So I think on a base level, it's a sort of responsibility to yourself, Black or not Black, to observe Black History Month and understand it as how it is integral to understanding something like American life or American history, American literature, American culture, whatever it is that you want to say. But at the same time, I think that there's a charge there that Black History Month has to be thought of in that capacious way, that this isn't just what one group of people did from whatever point in time to now. It is also about how Blackness is integral to everything that's happening around us and the ways that it operates, right? And that forces Black History Month to stop its sort of museumification, if I put it this way.
That's a good word.
What's up?
I said that was a really good word. I like that.
It's probably fake.
But we'll take it. I like it. It had.
Don't say that. We're gonna take it.
Well, put it this way, and Dom, I know you grew up around Virginia, and I'm sure that there were moments where it was like, okay, this is this monument, or this is that monument, and so on and so forth. And you're learning it as a kid, and it's just like, okay. And then you get someone come up around, it's like, oh, we can go see the Washington Monument or whatever. And it's like, oh, what? Oh yeah, and there's Monticello, and they're like, what? And it's just all this stuff that just happens to just fall into the background. And that's the kind of danger, I think, with the sort of heritage or, you know, cultural history months, is that if it becomes these atomized little facts of, okay, here are some key figures in the book, memorize the list and regurgitate them back on the test or whatever, then it's done. Then there's no real need to see how this is integral to everything else that you did, right? Like, you can't understand the Revolutionary War, the Civil War, Reconstruction, anything else. You're gonna fail every single one of those tests if you decide to opt out of the Black history portion. And if that's not the way that we think about it, we're doing something wrong.
I have a question for the group. Just as hearing you talk, and it made me think. So do you think that possibly the reason why white people have adverse thoughts about Black history is because our history is filled with so much oppression that was done to us by white people. By acknowledging Black history and Black History Month, they have to also acknowledge the oppression and the negative influence and effect that they have had on Black people. So, you know, they want us to forget slavery, to move past that and all of that, because there's so much that white people would have to take ownership and have to be accountable for, as recognizing what their ancestors did, that now that's like, I don't want to have any part of that, because I want us to move past that.
Yeah, I think that I think there's like two big reasons. First, I think there's guilt, because on our end, I can't speak obviously all Black. Generally speaking, we don't so much have today for happened 400 years. However, for to ask a lot of white people, they would feel like they are being blamed. And so I think there's almost this talk about generational trauma all the time. I feel like there's some sort of generational guilt that is instilled. And so I don't want to have anything to do with that. I don't want to feel that. So I'm just push this away. But on top of that, I also feel like another reason to push it away is because you cannot just understand that these things happened. Things are happening negatively because these things did not do anything. It has to be some sort of change. Change is uncomfortable.
Sure.
So I feel like it's twofold. No aspect, but then also my life is good where it's at right now. If I start moving all these things around, something might happen to how I'm set. So I feel like that's the reason for the big push.
Yesterday, somebody who knew that we were to this person, and we got connected. And one, and it's to your point, for Black history, right? And for Black culture, Black art, Black film, all those things, you have to understand. Like you were saying, I don't want to wear that weight. And it's interesting because it's like you said, I'm not putting it on you. I don't think that you're responsible for what happened. Responsible for what happened. And I think one of the things that comes being held accountable, right? And so when you tell somebody like, "Yo, no, you didn't own me at all," obviously, but you're also not putting in the education so that you can not be a part of the system oppressing me, right? And it's like, whoa, now you want me to, and honestly, to kind of circle back to what you said at the beginning, Courtney, I think they're lazy. Obviously, I don't mean all white people, but I think it's a laziness that not want to understand because of the weight of it all. It's like somebody posted yesterday talking about how Lakeith Stanfield had to go to therapy after Messiah, and it's like just in that role, he felt the weight of the character that he. As Black people, feel the weight of the oppression that our people for us and now, yet we still have to do the work. And as white people, like, on with feeling that weight, just feel it and get stronger from it, better because of it. But distance, and I think there's a lot of voices, and they're usually the loud. This is what we don't need constant, like with the stereotypes. If you don't spend your life or around Black, only know about right? That's one of the things happening. They're hearing from people who are look like. I mean, it's different when somebody who like you is telling you something. As a Black person, when no matter what there's a few who get it, but for the most part, no matter everything that I'm being heard, prism of you're upset with me. Whereas I feel like with white people, oh man, they're not holding you responsible. And I think that's where lack of effort, a lot. And it is. I mean, I understand. Recognize my people, all of this suffering, who in reality want to walk. And that's the beauty. You don't have to from it. And as you get stronger, just like get stronger, 30 pounds doesn't feel like it used to. But you got to be willing to put. I haven't seen. Yo, what about that? Talk about the facts here.
There is an anti-racist activist by the name of Rachel Cagle, and she was on the Red Table Talk, and she had said that we all got when you do any type of anti-racist anything, you kind of hear some of the same defense mechanisms and the same, which makes it so easy that we just start to just debunk these things, like somebody said that Irish people were slaves. It's like, no, they weren't. It's like these things that we just debunk and we have links ready to prove what we said. But what she said is that as long as Black people in America have to still deal with the remnants of the past, at things that were done to our ancestors, then white people today should still have to deal with the remnants of the past that their ancestors have done. So it's not to say, I blame you, but you should feel some weight in order to correct some of the things that happened in the past in a way that is equitable to Black people if you want this country to move forward and for things to be progressive. It is not to say that every time I see you, I want you to say, oh, I'm so sorry, here's $5. That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is that you should think, okay, we know that these things were done. We can because we want to stay factual, right? We know these things were done historically, and we've done the work. We know that the New Deal didn't help Black people redline and develop hoods, and we understand that the war on drugs, we understand all these things happened to you and how this stuff wasn't done 600 years ago and stopped. We understand this stuff is a snowball effect. So because I understand that this stuff happened, and I understand that I still benefit from the things that my ancestor done, like inheritance and land and all this other stuff. I still benefit from all of this. I want to use that in order to provide equity. And I think it goes back to your point, because they are comfortable. They don't want to be uncomfortable. So it's this fear that has been established that by me providing equity or fighting for equity means that I have to give up something. And I'm not ready to give up anything that I have in order for there to be equity. And even the term equity throws people off because they automatically monetize it. And it's not necessarily monetized. I don't want you to give me money. I just want you to get out the way so I can make my own, so that I can accomplish my own things. I want you to remove the obstacles that you have put in my way that still exist, that are still on the books today, like unfair appraisals for homes, these loans that they give, these predatory loans and all these other things. I just want the obstacles removed. I could do the rest myself. Because what we know from Black history is that we're resilient people and we can get the rest ourselves. We just need y'all to move out the way.
Good way of putting it too. I don't want to hand
Come through, Ludacris.
Yeah, don't.
Yeah.
Don't give me anything. Just scoot over. You know?
Yeah, Karen, let me sell my water bottles. You know what I'm saying? Just
yeah, you know. But Terrell, did you want to jump in on this before we go to the next question?
Yeah, let me just say one thing. James Baldwin and Ta-Nehisi Coates after him, who kind of, he swiped it, but that's kind of how writing and art works. Have this way of turning a phrase of talking about white people and never necessarily, or sometimes not referring to them as white people, but talking about them as people who believe they are white. And there's a lot to unpack there in a lot of different ways in terms of what it means to believe you are white. But one of the most basic ways to think about it is, before you got to the United States, you came from Italy, maybe France, maybe Ireland, and the Irish were not slaves in the way that people perpetuate that narrative, but they also were not very wealthy with respect to Europe as a whole, and a variety of other identities and cultural locations. And you didn't come here with a whole lot to your name. But what whiteness was something to, one, get you to get rid of all of that. And, you've got a number of people who can even recall stories from, their grandparents and their elders of having a name, and you get to Ellis or Angel Island, you've got to change it up because it doesn't sound, it sounds too specific, too much Italian or some other cultural background in there. It needs to sound like an English name. And then come here, become white, and we're not going to give you anything, but we will promise that there's always going to be a group of people who will come after you.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what, believing you are white is about. And it also means believing a number of other things, like, everything that you've acquired within your lifetime was acquired by your own work, right? When, if you do the history, if it weren't for slavery and the enslavement of African peoples, capitalism and the entire industry of the United States would never have been possible. And so all of that, having to unpack all those assumptions, is a part of, having to face, I think, what is the significance of Black history to the United States in a much larger context. And that's a lot of unlearning about who you think you are and how you move through the world. And like I said, like you've all said, that's work.
Yeah,
And work is hard.
Work is hard.
It's to your point about, like, when people coming over to Ellis Island, and I was trying to Google to find the year that this all took place, but there was a time where ethnic groups could actually petition to be recognized as white. That's what white supremacy has done. That's what whiteness has done, is that Black people could never petition to be white. You're not. But other ethnic groups could come here so that they could get the rights that white people had. How crazy is that? How crazy?
That's wild. That's news to me. I had never heard.
Yeah. And this is like the 1920s. This is like between like 1900s and 1920s. So if this wasn't like 1800s, this is like,
yeah. I think she was talking about it a little in White Fragility too.
Well, think about it. The Irish were not always considered white, nor
Right.
were the Scottish, nor were the Jewish. If you were part of Eastern Europe, that all was not white at a certain point in time. So that's precisely the context of that, and that's precisely what believing you are white is foregoing all that baggage of when you were somebody who no one had to recognize.
And I think, I guess the odd thing to me is, so I'm an empath. So if I see you hurt, I can feel your hurt. So if I believe that I am a descendant of these Irish indentured servants that people want, if I want to say that, like, yeah, we had it rough, then in turn, if you feel like somehow that was anywhere near comparable to chattel slavery and having your children stripped from you and being beaten and castrated and sterilized, and for some reason you feel like that's the same, then you should feel the need to say, you know what, because I understand, because it happened to my people, that we should be able to do this together to make sure that this doesn't happen to another people again.
Right.
But some take that mindset of, well, this happened to my people and we were treated like this, and we pulled ourselves up by our bootstraps. And I so hate that term and that whole. This is the reason why the history of Black people is important, because it's understanding the history of America and understand the history of white supremacy. And when you take conversations and things out of context, then that's where you get all these fallacies about why we are here where we are now, and why it is that we do have Black neighborhoods, Black communities, why we do have crime, why we do have these disparities. It's because you don't even want to put things in historical context, but you want to remove Black history and you don't really want to talk about it. But at the same time, you want us to move on. But 9/11, never forget. I don't know if I'm taking a lot of shots or not, but I feel like.
I think you're taking the right amount.
Okay.
I think we're good.
I was expecting more.
I got a lot more, I got a lot.
Don't tempt me.
Some days I come and I'm feeling violent like Tupac. I'm violent.
That's wild though, and I still can't get over the whole, which that puts it in a new perspective, because you get it all the time. I don't know how we got stuck on Irish, but Irish were slaves. They got treated terribly, but look at us now. Now I'm sitting here like, okay, but wait a minute, you signed up for whiteness, you did that, and now you're here. It's no wonder that everything. Obviously, we know that the history is not the same, but still, that adds another layer to it. I just had to. That was wild.
I'm also real curious as to what is here, right? Like, what bootstraps did you climb out? But that's not
because there was no water fountain in the 1950s that said Irish only. You know what I'm talking about? That wasn't a thing. It's not a thing, and it's not a thing. And it's this. What about? What are they? What about? Yeah. And it's like anything to silence or negate the Black voice, and this is why there's no change until the people,
had a Black president.
Yeah, and we see how that went. Apparently, somebody was treated worse than he was, as if there wasn't like epithets of, nooses around his neck. Like that happened. Like the most beautiful FLOTUS ever. Y'all see how she killed it at the inauguration? Like, come on, Mo. She is flawless. But anyway, they called her monkeys, gorillas. And the thing about it is, for me, at least personally, whenever I hear you call one of us a monkey or a gorilla, I know that you mean that we're all monkeys and gorillas. So I take it a little bit personal when you do that, especially when y'all started that Darwinism. Y'all the one that said that evolutionary chart wasn't a Black man at the end, it was a white guy. So I just saying, I digress. Too many?
But no, you're still good. You're still on course. But the whole idea you brought up earlier about, there was no Irish only problems or Asian. And it's true that other races have obviously faced issues and backlash in America, for whatever reason. Think about Japanese, World War II. So obviously other people have faced things, but it's never been to that degree. But the reason I feel that people are able to claim that it was to that degree is because the lack of education on these things. We don't talk about how recently those found. Like the way
we still have sundown counties. Let's be real.
Exactly, and several of more than several. Several is not the word for tons of them. But we don't. When we talk about that history, we just kind of glaze over it, touch it, and we hop off. Touch it right. We don't get the gravity of grandparents were alive while we're talking about these crazy things. It's not that long ago. And so I think that far as Black History Month goes, I think that's why it's so important. But I feel like it's almost at a spot now. For whatever reason, it's just a word and month like this hollow, not much excitement. Like you said yourself, Courtney, your son said they're not even doing anything. Like History Month, it was just a regular day at school, you know. So with that knowledge, what should we do? Does Black History Month need to be reevaluated? Do we need to change it and modify it in some way? There are people that believe we should just get rid of it. Should we just get rid of it? Like where should we go as it pertains to Black history?
I think that every Black person has a responsibility. We have a responsibility because our stories, we have a heritage stemming all the way back from the motherland of there always being a storyteller. And there's an important role of the storyteller. And the storyteller has to continue to tell the stories, even if other cultures try to wipe them away. I sit down and I talk to my kids about Black history. You know, I read up on stuff because there's a lot of stuff that I didn't know. And I'm just like, whoa, that happened. Now I need to share this with my kids. Not just my kids. I need to share with other people. But we need to do this 365 days of the year, not just during Black History Month. We have a responsibility. And so there's a lot of things, just talking to my people, that we have to step up and take ownership for. And this is one of those things. Because history will erase us. I made a comment earlier, I posted earlier on Facebook, there seems to all of a sudden be this, and I don't want to say all of a sudden, it's probably pretty much always been the case, but to rewrite history. You know, I've seen history books saying like, and it seemed like they called the transatlantic slave trade the Black migration. This was no migration, sir. This was not chosen. And so when we allow history to be rewritten unchallenged, then that's why we get a generation of kids that are okay with their white friends saying the N-word. Or they say, well, I don't see racism because it didn't happen to me, but they don't understand how the effects, even though it may not have explicitly happened to you, you are still dealing with the effects of slavery and institutional racism and all this other stuff. So you may not ever feel like a white person came to you and attacked you and said anything. And I hope that you never have to deal with that, because those of us that have had those moments, they stay with you. I don't want you to have to feel that. But I need for you to understand that systemically there have been things that have been put into place that you need to be cognizant of. And it's not always a walk around. It's not, I'm not saying that for us to walk around with a chip on our shoulder like we think that everybody is out to get us, but it's being aware. It's being aware that these things exist. Like as a woman, there's certain things that I don't do, not because of any other reason, but that I know certain dangers exist. I'm not be out late at night in empty parking lots. I'm not going to do certain things. So we have to take up the yoke, and we have to be responsible of keeping our history alive, to continue for ourselves to do the study and doing the work and doing the research. And then we have to share it. We have to share it and share as much as we can share an article about Russell and Sierra. We should be able to share the history, our beautiful history, and even the not so beautiful things, so that we can grow from that and that our kids have something. That was my long-winded answer, but yeah.
That was good. That's thanks. Full on honor stuff. Kind of drop off. Like history. I want to let Terrell go.
I think that the biggest thing for Black History Month is to really rethink or contextualize the mission. And the way I see it, there's three possibilities, right? And these can overlap. These can all be true. It can be some combination of the three, but the way I see it is there's three sort of things that Black History Month should try to accomplish, or can possibly accomplish. One is there's this sense of uplift, right? Which is sort of correcting the lack of representation, rewriting the sort of myths that have been told about us. And to that extent, perhaps the commercialization of Black History Month has a role or needs to be kept in check or recontextualized. Or there's even the possibility that it's something that should be led from local Black groups, local Black institutions, and then, thought of from out there. Maybe there's a need to sort of get it out of Target's hands, because Target's always going to just do whatever it is that Target wants to do to make sure the bottom line stays right. The second possibility that's definitely something that's more in my wheelhouse and what I'm always thinking about is thinking about Black History Month as a political and cultural historical intervention. In which case it means to, for everything that we're talking about, right? You're not going to tell me that we watched this past presidential cycle and Black History Month Black history had nothing to say about it, right? Or had no meaningful mode of intervention or more moment where like, nah, this doesn't make any sense, right? And to be able to have a Black History Month that could equip Black people to know that, nah, that's a lie, and here's why it's a lie. But also American citizens to know, nah, that's a lie, and we shouldn't believe any of that, right? And to that end, I think the third possibility is it needs to maybe even have a little bit of teeth, right? It could be as much about celebration as it is about this American thing is a work in progress, and there have been a lot of wrong turns. Let's take a moment to take stock of it. And in that case, it's not so much a warm, fuzzy uplift. It's in many ways, maybe Black History Month needs to turn to something less celebratory and more the way that, and Ta-Nehisi Coates and others have thought about it this way, more the way that Germans think about the Holocaust. Like, this is what has made us who we are. And if we're going to move forward with this, we need to have this in the back of our minds. Like, you can't be German in 2021 and not know that this is in your backyard and this is in your DNA and this is what happened. Americans should have the same conceptualization about slavery, Jim Crow, prison industrial complex, police brutality, so on and so forth. That is a part of your socio-cultural historical DNA. And if you don't know that about yourself, you're gonna slowly kill yourself and others around you.
Good. Especially that third one. I had never thought of that. Or as maybe this isn't. Because you're right. I don't know. I know if you, and as far as I know, there's no Holocaust Nazi paraphernalia is not even legal. Entire country, like it's not that they just wiped it, but we all know about it to make sure. So that's a very good idea that we all know about. Was so that we don't do it again. Not right now.
Not even legal as heritage.
Well, it's and the thing is, I have very close German friends. And
You have what?
I have very close German friends. And one of the things that we talked about when we talked about like the Holocaust and how things are done over there, they actually have monuments and statues that represent those that have fallen. So the Jewish people that actually, those are the monuments and the statues that are erected. It's of those who were harmed. How many monuments or statues do you see of slaves are Africans in shackles and in chains just randomly in all of these cities? And what we do know is that those statues were not erected like right after the Confederate War. Though most of the Confederate statues that were erected in the 1960s during the time that Black people were fighting for their civil rights. So it wasn't erected out of heritage, it was erected out of y'all really trying to do too much. Well, let me remind you of where you are.
Please, boy.
And so it's totally different. So when people try to use that, I'm just like, you don't even know your heritage. Like, you want to say that the Confederate flag that's heritage, that's the Virginia battle flag. That's not even the flag of the Confederacy. So how do you even know you don't know your own heritage that you claim is heritage? I know more about your heritage than you do.
Which speaks volumes, right? And that like right there, what you just said, it kind of like engulfs or encapsulates. It sums up everything that I feel about Black History Month. Like, as Black people, like what you just said, we have to know these, like, for us to move forward. And I feel like, why don't you have to know these things about? Like, you're able to just live your life and pretend as if Black history is supposed to be relegated that you and everybody that looks like you complain about. Whereas, in order for us to even have a conversation, have to let it be known that, yo, I know what I'm talking about when it comes to other cultures and other races. But so, as far as what needs to happen, I think that ultimately, and I didn't know this before, Aaron Courtney, a person who started it, I think that his, right, where it gets to the point where you don't need, because like what is that? You know what I mean? It's like, it's just history. Like, right? And that's not to say we eradicate Black history as a subcategory, but Black history is history, especially in Black history in America. Like, what about Black history that until we get there, isn't it the for our unwilling? Because it's not just for a lot of Black people. Of what, when you were, I was thinking about myself. I remember they tried to give me a lot of our people books, but I remember what I learned in school. Everything that I learned in school told me it didn't mean what they were trying to, because this is over. Like, done. Like, Martin Luther King killed that. Like, when he died, so did racism, right? So, like, I'm going to school with white people. They're going to school, as my parents were trying to put these books in my down on my face, and so I actually kind of lived this. I don't think that I'll ever not be Black, but I think that I'll get that I was Black in the name of harmony, racial harmony, or whatever. And more often than times that I forgot that I was Black when I found myself out of trouble. It's like, hold on, that's right, I am Black. I can't do these things. I think that, yeah, Black history. I know about more than just. Somebody put in the comments earlier when Booker T. Washington, two paragraphs, right? And it's like, okay, we need to lean into oppression, we need to lean rape, and like all of these different things. It's not to glorify it, sound like it was better than what it was, but understand my existence, you have to understand the story. And I don't think that we get there without looking at all of it. And I don't think that we can, like you just said, you're not talking about literature without talking about race. You're not talking about America without talking. So I think that the history, another divide. Like what I feel about Democrat, Republican sides of the same, right? Like, at the end of the day, we have Black history. This more or less to the masses. I mean, I understand as you find it person, but like they did what was last summer, Black Lives Matter. That's cool, but what is that doing for us? What are we doing? Pick it up and not no longer.
Can I add two things to that?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
First is, should it ever come to pass, and it's a very similar conversation, because one of the courses that I'm technically training to be able to teach is an African American lit course. And sometimes people mention, well, what happens if African American lit phases out as a course offering in English literature departments? Because similar to Black History Month, it's everywhere, right? We don't teach an American literature course or American history course without talking about Black authors, Black events and things that are happening there, so on and so forth. When that happens, then we'll also have holidays like April 4th to commemorate the passing of Martin Luther King. We'll probably have February either 21st or maybe sometime in May, that's from Malcolm X. Juneteenth will become a national holiday. That if Black History Month dissipates, and dissipates not because people attack it for the wrong reasons, but because it's achieved its mission of being a part of American history writ large, Blackness will appear on the calendar in a variety of different ways, because it will be recognized as what it is, as Black and American, so on and so forth. And separate, when you mentioned Booker T, the thing that is a big part of the museumification of Booker T is not really getting into what was really going on between him and W.B. Du Bois. Those were the big political conversations about how to go about this civil rights thing, or how about to go about this liberation thing. And a similar thing between Malcolm X and Martin Luther King. And there's, the watered down versions of one was, on one side, one was on the other side. But the more you get into that, you realize actually they did have very different strategies, both pairs, between Du Bois and Washington and King and X. But there's a lot of interesting political interactions between their strategies and tactics. And from an organizing perspective, that's important stuff to know if you're going to talk about what do we do from here. So
I think I love that you brought that up. Everybody knows how I feel about Malcolm X and watered down stuff and all of that. But I want to add to the point, and as I'm sitting here thinking about like how white supremacy works and how we know that it works. And I think that, to your point, if you start to integrate Black history in its totality as best as you can into mainstream education or normal history or American history, what you then do is the heroes no longer look like heroes. Now the heroes that we've been told are heroes, we start to see them for the fallacy that they really are. And so teachers now have to start teaching to that. And we all know the minds of children. They ask questions and they want to know why. And then you have to start explaining stuff that you're not ready to explain or you're not ready to talk about. And I remember, because I'm a learner of people and cultures. And so I remember a guy friend of mine invited me to a mosque, and from Nation of Islam. It was Nation. And I remember the brother that spoke, the minister that spoke, said that when you look at how history is taught in our schools, the Black child does not see himself in history until slavery. But prior to that, the white child sees himself as the founding father, as a pilgrim, as a mighty conqueror, and all this other stuff. And we know from child development that what you speak into a kid and what you speak into what they see, that's what they start to identify as, and that's what they start to see themselves as. So if you start teaching Black history intertwined and the villains start to become the heroes and the heroes start to become the villains, then you start putting stuff in Black people that you don't want to be there.
Yeah.
The knowledge of self, the resilience, You don't want to put that in there. And there was a study shown that when hip hop in the 80s and in the early 90s was at its purest, where it was talking about knowledge itself, you had more Black people going to college. You had the Cosby Show. You had all of these things, and Black excellence started to soar. And then what happened? You had record execs take hold of the music and all that. And when the music started to change, the motivation and the drive and everything behind started to switch in our youth. And so if you put the truth in books,
you're gonna keep me here for another hour. You gotta shut up.
if you start putting the truth in books that we read, then you would think about if Nat Turner had 2 or 3 pages. Think about if they played the Nat Turner movie in school with white kids sitting next to you. Think about if they show Rosewood in school sitting next to people. Think about if they had the Black Wall Street and what happened in Tulsa shown in school. Think about the bombing that happened in Philly in the 1970s to the Black. What if they started showing this stuff in school and kids started to learn that? And they learned it on top of the heroes that you want us to accept.
Probably a revolution.
It would change.
Everything
Of our kids would change. And we've seen it, and we've heard our leaders say it time and time again. The biggest threat to American white supremacy is the education of a Black man. That's the threat. So why would upholders of white supremacy put the truth in schools where it can be readily eaten, devoured, consumed, and then retaught? Why would they do that? Why we can't depend on the schools to teach our children. And it's even a study shown that Black children succeed more so in schools that are culturally relevant than they do in PWIs. That's the reason why. Look at HBCUs. I put undergrad, PWI, great education, graduate school at Howard, and what I get from my classmates and my professors is so much more than what I got from the PWIs. Like a professor, they'll talk to you, but they will clear their schedule because they understand that your success is their success and a collective success for the community. So when you start to put that empowerment in schools, that's where change happens. And that's where people start to feel like that's where the real fear will come in at. It's the power of education. So you can keep us to a month because that's giving us a false reality of a freedom that we don't have. Sorry, long-winded again.
Oh,
Nah,
good.
Sorry.
Don't say sorry. No. You know, as you were speaking, it made me think of, in recent years, I've said it multiple times, and I have no shame about it over the years. Last 4 years, just started diving in Black history, politics. But one of the things, listening to James Baldwin, into Stokely Carmichael, that I never heard about in school. And as I'm listening, I feel that. Not only do I feel that, the fact that you were 40, 50 years ago, and I'm still saying it today, and Dom's still saying it today, and we're still saying it today, is a problem. And I think that had I learned about those people in elementary school, middle school, high school, and had Dom been taught those, our lives ultimately, obviously, it's a trajectory, and so much change that is still going to happen. What happens because we would be educated on what changed. Because, like I said earlier, nothing needed to change as far as I knew. Like, all the change had already happened. Like Martin Luther King, he did it. Whereas, no, it didn't work. But I think that there's a lot of relevant.
We're wrapping up here, closing down, getting ready to call it a night. So what we like to do at the end, all of us call our final This is where we take 60 seconds each of us to leave the audience one thing to take away. So Ms. Courtney, why don't we start with you covering your mouth in preparation?
6-0. Timer's on.
So I guess my final thoughts is that I want one for white viewers to understand, because I think that this is sometimes a thought that they have in their head, is that Black history is something that we want to keep for ourselves, and it's not. We want it to be shared. We want you to know. We want you to understand. We want you to recognize how we have made America great and how we have done our best to achieve the American dream, because we want it just as bad as anybody else does. We want our kids to have the same opportunities and all this other stuff. And when you don't know our history, you start to say things that's not in context. Like somebody actually said, well, Netflix has a whole Black programming. They don't have a white like playlist. And I'm just like, never mind. Anyway, but what I'm trying to say is that like Black history is not something that we take ownership of the pride that it gives us, but it's not something that we want to just close off just for ourselves, because it's too important. It's too beautiful. It's too majestic. It's too all of the things. And slavery is not the Black person's burden. It's actually the white man's burden. That's not our burden to carry. So we don't want to keep telling stories of slavery, because the only time that I really even bring that up is when people try to say that like Irish slavery and chattel slavery is the same thing. And then I have to remind them that it's not. But I don't want to keep talking about slavery to a certain point either, because it's painful. But that's not our burden to carry anymore. And we're tired of that. And for my Black people, I want you to take ownership and take back the station that you have, because like I said, in the motherland, there were storytellers. Take back your tribal instinct and stand up and be the storyteller of your family. We all have Black history within our family, and we need to write those stories down. We need to retell them at lunch, dinner, anytime we interact with the kids. You know, your uncle did this. You know, your grandfather went through this, because that's how they start to build their resiliency, when they know exactly where they come from. It's great to learn about all the wonderful Black people outside of them, but they need to start understanding the Black people inside of their own families, so that they can start building their strength and their identity from that. And that's how I feel like you get the next generation prepared for whatever comes their way, because they will start to remember. Because then when we talk about the Bible starts with what? The begets. This person begat this person, and that person begat that person. This person begat that person. You can't even understand the New Testament unless you understand the Old Testament. And if you look at the Bible, the Old Testament, there were some things that happened that the Israelites did was wrong, but God didn't say, well, we're just going to take that part out as if it didn't happen. So we have to make sure that our children understand all of our history, the good, bad, and the ugly. And we have a responsibility to be the storytellers in order to do that.
It was 4 minutes, but we let you get off. I'm clocking.
Yeah. That was good though. That was good.
Yeah.
I'll set a timer next time.
All right, Terrell.
All right, y'all don't have to worry about me. I actually coach debate, so I usually have timers right here, so I'll watch myself. So I think, as I talked about a little bit earlier, there's a way in which Black History Month can get caught up between the obligation for uplift, but then also this necessity of critique and remembering the violence and the oppression of the past. And my hope would be is that for everybody, Black, white, or otherwise, approaching Black History Month is to absorb both of that and to understand that it is about the pain. It is about the various ways in which oppression has emerged and remerged, but also about the ways that life has over existed within, and made itself anew. And that hopefully that's a metaphor for what America can do unto itself. And one thing that I'll say, just a little bit over time, March is Women's History Month. That includes Black women. Thank you for coming to the TED Talk.
That was good. But you want to go?
You're my hero. I need a timer.
Okay, so for me, I think the biggest thing that I would want to, this is work. If we say the work, it's going to be work. This may even, well, no, this will be work that surpasses our current generation. So because of that, I feel like our focus, Black people, Black history, should be taking it upon ourselves, because the next generation run entire school districts, actually write curriculum. That's how we're able to get things into school as a whole, and this is how I feel like to actually the mission. I also think there's a new age of wokeness, kind of like it gets kind of aggressive to the point where we have people that'll say, you know, nah, Black History Month is expensive. Let's just get rid of the whole thing. We don't need it. Get rid of it. Where we stand now, like I said, it's a shell. We get Black history back at square one. So I think our focus should be keep this for now, because the mission of Black history is not done. Push that mission forward, build this knowledge into they grow, they can get to that and finally get it into whole, then we can get. So that's how I feel about it. That's where I stand. And if y'all could take anything away, then take that. Let's focus on that.
I want Black history. Fact, this that's happening right now is Black. Like in years, people are going to be able to look back and say, "Oh man, they had a conversation." Maybe it sparks an idea halfway across, leads a movement that fulfills the mission of Black history. To happen. I want for Black people, especially, we are Black history. You don't have to just get Malcolm X and Martin, Nat Turner, and like all of these heroes that we got to learn about in school. They like, okay, they are Black history. Yes, they are. Pride that for white. Still watching this so loudly. If this conversation or offended in any way, check your heart. Not racist. Black people.
All right.
Yeah, yeah. I normally talk longer.
That's where it's at. No, I was a little surprised. All
I'll
right,
do
guys.
better next time.
No, you're. But I want to thank you guys both so much for coming in. Like I said, this is out of the that I really think that doing are going to take away. You guys again so much. With that, that's the end for us tonight. As usual, stay tuned. We have more stuff coming. And Charles will be back tomorrow night. But in the meantime, and then we've got some more guys as well. Stay tuned, following us and sharing and spreading the word so that possible. That, you guys have a blessed evening.